This episode is brought to you by Excel Coaching Academy. Hey guys, I'm really excited to let you know that I started a mindset coaching business. So what I want to do with this business is I want to help entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople, leaders, and fitness enthusiasts or athletes develop the right mindset to increase revenue, improve business or performance, and overcome the challenges needed to become the best version of themselves. You can get more information about this by emailing info@excelcoaching.academy. Countdown makes everybody nice and nervous, but yeah, so I usually just ask you to introduce yourself and just kind of say who you are and what you do, and then from there we'll just dive in.
Okay.
So whenever you're ready, if you want to introduce yourself and just tell us who you are.
All right. Okay. So hi, I'm Jodi Anne Law, and a transformational energy medicine practitioner. And I transform people. I empower them to get in touch with their body and their mind, and tune into their intuition to transform their lives. So a lot of people, it's empowering you to work on you to get to the core of your health issues. And it's been a very interesting journey to get to this point. So I don't know if you want me to start back there, Cody.
Yeah, I'm curious. What got you to this point?
Well, right back, it was actually about 11 years ago. And I've been in the health system for 30 years at the acute care end, so intensive care, and then cardiac, as I ended up running cath lab. So cardiac cath lab, where you come in if you've had a heart attack, come in and we put in some stents, or if you need a pacemaker, put in a pacemaker, or if you've got faulty rhythms, we would correct that as well. And so it was actually pretty stressful, but with hindsight, it was pretty stressful. When you do it and just get on with it, you don't realize what you're putting yourself through. And but 11 years ago, I got involved in complementary therapy because my life sort of fell apart, really. So personally, I left a relationship that was really not healthy, and my children were only 5 and 7 at the time. I've been married for 20 years, and it wasn't good from the start. And so then I had to deal with the fallout of the guilt and shame attached to leaving my children. So it was then that I began my healing journey, if you like, my transformational input. And because I'd had that mainstream health that was my background, I went down those routes first, and I was encouraged to see a psychologist and take antidepressants, and I did both. But 12 months on, exactly the same position. Like, hey, come on, I can't put up with this. I want to change my story, basically. So I weaned off the medication with the help of a GP, and I had just started yoga. And yoga is a form of energy medicine, even though at the time I didn't know that. I was just doing it for sanity. And I realized too that I'd taken up this, I'd taken up like a 6-week package for beginners, $25 for 6 weeks. This was back in Australia. And the first 2 weeks, every class that I did, which was every day because I knew I needed something to do every day, I was in tears at the end of every class. So I figured that there's got to be something good. I don't know what it is, but let's explore it further. And I ended up not so long after that actually moving to the country where I had a lot more time to work on me because it was a lot more affordable. And my children then started to come up every second weekend to see me as well. So we started to establish a really good relationship, but I started a yoga teacher training course, and that was pretty transformational. So I started off as the angry, opinionated, everything one in the class, and we had a weekend a month that we caught up, and they were really like 15-hour days, but fantastic connections that it made. And really quite quickly, I was, in this beautiful nurturing space with these beautiful people that wanted to bring yoga to the world. So it really was quite quick that my life started to change. As I mentioned, my children started to come up every second weekend. So I started to establish a relationship with them on my terms. And the job that I had, I ended up getting a job that worked for me hours-wise. So I was working part-time. in an area that I wanted to work in, which was the cath lab. So I wasn't having to work nights. And then 3 months into that, I was introduced to energy psychology. And that's basically working with your emotions. And what do we do with emotions? In society, we just shove them down. And certainly, I mean, it's probably a bit easier for women because we're allowed to cry, aren't we? A bit more than men. But when you, and for me, that was a game changer, because when you are able to work out what your emotions are doing and why they're surfacing and what do you do when they do surface, my life changed unbelievably. So 18 months, basically I had 18 months to work on me as I desperately needed. So then of course life rolls on, doesn't it? And at this stage I was actually working with friends, and I had a few clients part-time. Life rolls on, and I happened to have married an Englishman, and he decided that he was going to bring the children over to the UK. So I had to go through that process because they were all British citizens, and I went through the process of having to apply for a visa. And that was challenging because I didn't get the first visa I applied for. So it took about 22 months before I got to see my children in the country, in the UK, when I came over here. Because the interesting thing with the visa, this is just by the by, but when you apply for it, it can take up to 3 months to get. And then when you get the application through, you have to get into the country within a month. So the whole time that you go for it, you're just sort of waiting. You're just waiting to leave. And so for 22 months, I was just waiting to leave to get to see my children. Anyway, I arrived in the UK, and so all the work that I had done was brilliant because that obviously helped. But still, I knew my ex-husband and 2 children. So how was I ever going to do this? When you rock up in March and it's spring in the UK, and like, where's the sun? Like, what's going on? So I ended up doing some more energy work with learning hypnosis with some Americans actually online, and they were absolute sanity. We were creating online programs, and then I involved myself in learning hypnosis, which helped the understanding of the energy psychology side of things. And I learned Reiki because everybody that does energy medicine knows Reiki. So what's that all about? And then I discovered not long before COVID, Eden energy medicine. And that was, it basically brought all the things that I had learnt together. So Donna Eden is a woman that lives in the US, and she can see energy. So she healed herself from multiple sclerosis as she was growing up in her early 20s. And by the age of 29, she had a heart attack and was told to put all her affairs in order. She had 2 young children at the time as well. And because she could see energy, she started working on herself. And then as she started working on herself, 2 years it took for her multiple sclerosis symptoms to go. And then she started working on other people and created a whole program around what she can see. And it's amazing. She went to all sorts of different modalities of energy medicine. And she went to it, like, for example, in a kinesiology talk. And she comes back home all excited because, those things that I can see that go up and down, they're meridians. And those things that spin, they're chakras. So she sort of went back to front. She knew what she could see, and she tried to get all the information she could to match what she saw, and created this program out of it. And the way it's structured is it links in everything. So it's very much now, it's a mind, body, soul connection. And so, and it's worked for me, on me. And I don't suggest anyone go through the emotional pain that I went through to benefit. But if it works on somebody that's gone through what I've gone through, hey, isn't it worth a try? And so, and then 2 years ago, I ended up leaving the health system because my health started to fail. So clearly, here I am asking the universe that, okay, and the universe is providing me with more ill health and more ill health. So I was completely burnt out from working at the acute care end. So I left and now do this energy work full time. And I just love it because it is so transformational. And I get to see the transformations on everybody I work with. So it's very rewarding.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be a very rewarding career. There's a lot there to talk about.
There is, isn't there? Where do
So
you want
I
to
don't know,
start with?
man. I think the thing that sticks out. I was taking some notes over here as you were talking. You mentioned energy psychology, and this is the first I've heard this refer to this way. Um,
Okay.
and so what is that? You said it's basically under mentally understanding your emotions. Is that right?
Yeah. So, well, we hold emotions in our body at cellular level. And the way, so with everything, like, are you familiar with the term everything is energy? Are you comfortable with
Yep.
that?
Yep.
Yeah. So if everything is energy, emotions are just another energy. And you can feel, if you tune into them, you can feel them in your body. So we're holding these emotions. So
Mhm.
emotions that feel good would be, joy, happy, fun. And they feel, when you think about them, if you close your eyes and think about them, they feel light and joyous. So they're high frequency emotions because everything's energy. And emotions that don't feel so great, shame, guilt, low frequency. So if you look at life in terms of energy and emotions in terms of energy, then if it doesn't feel great, then ask yourself, what are you thinking and what are you feeling?
Mhm.
Because in with each emotion comes a thought, and comes a thought as well. So if you're feeling not so great, tune into it. What is it? It's okay to feel it. Welcome it. Whatever it is that you're feeling, welcome it up. And by welcoming it up, you're allowing that energy to move, because we can't get rid of energy. You can only transform it into another form and increase that frequency by welcoming it up. Because it's allowing people, first of all, to be okay with what it is they're feeling. And once they start to feel it, it's that connection between an emotion and feeling it in your body. And once you start to understand that and feel that, that's where the power lies with it, because then you can just be okay with it. Because as humans, there's resistance, isn't there? If we do it on ourselves, it can be tricky. You can certainly teach yourself to do it. But if you're working one on one, there's nowhere you can go. Come on, just keep welcoming it up and feeling what you're feeling. Because what we're doing is we're tapping into the subconscious brain. And the subconscious is where all our habits are formed. So, and energy has bad habits too. So the whole thing is all about changing the habits that we are playing out because it's the stories in our lives that when things aren't great in your life, what are you thinking, and what are you what emotions are you feeling, and where are you feeling it in your body? So when you start to understand those connections, where it's not just a symptom, I've got a sore foot, there can be an emotion attached to pain. So what story is playing out in your big toe if you've got a sore toe? And yes, if you've kicked your toe, obviously it's going to be sore. But if there's something underlying, that you wake up and there's something that's uncomfortable, a pain, a bit of tension somewhere, ask yourself, is there, what is it that I'm feeling? And welcome whatever it is up. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but it is a process to work through. And obviously it's small steps. If you haven't felt that in your body before, there is a process to go through to get to that understanding.
Well, yeah, and I definitely want to talk about that process, but it does make sense. You mentioned resistance to these emotions, and I think that's true. I think men maybe have a little bit more resistance than women, but where do you think that resistance comes from? I mean,
Well, it's actually our fight and flight response. Have you heard of fight
I,
and flight?
I
So
have. Yeah.
yeah. So it's our stress response. So we're talking about, we haven't evolved from caveman days in evolutionary. So way back then, when you're stressed, you go into fight and flight. And hang on, where do I start with this? So we're either in rest and digest, where all your
Mhm.
body systems are functioning well, or you're in fight and flight, where it's a safety mechanism that our whole body has just responds to, because it's a survival mode. So if you're stressed with something, so in the caveman days, it's the tiger after you. You're going to get ready and fight, or you're going to run like hell or freeze. But either way, whatever happens, whether you're eaten by the tiger or you've run and hidden from him, it's short lived. But because of the lives we lead today, we are, we've got deadlines to meet. We're stuck in traffic. We've got cranky bosses. We've got children that have got things on either side of town at the same time. And we're stressed. It's not the same as life and death, but the same hormones are running through your body as though you are running from, because your body doesn't know that. That's not something it's aware of. So it's reduced it. And because we're often sat down getting angry and annoyed, the hormones sit in your body. They're not allowed to move and run their course and be used up, if you like. So consequently, you cannot be in fight and flight, and you cannot be in rest and digest at the same time. So if we are in fight and flight, then your body cannot heal. So the whole process, if we want to heal and get optimum get to our optimum, then it's about calming down the stress response and not being in fight and flight, so that our body can actually heal. And if you think about like how much more irritable bowel or celiac or with the digestive tract, it's not given time to heal. So there's so many more gut conditions. You think about your immune system and how many people have, we all know several people probably with cancer and autoimmune illnesses like lupus. So all the systems. And what about growth and infertility? There's so much more IVF that so many more people doing IVF now, or they just are unable to have children because we're stressed all the time. So if we can get into that calming mode, then we're allowing our body to do what it's designed to do. So what was the actual question?
Well, so the question was, where does the resistance come from to the emotions?
So resistance comes from the fact that it's a survival thing. So we've shoved those emotions down for so long, and that we've only shoved them down because that's a survival thing. We don't want anyone to know that we've got shame or guilt around anything. That's not something you discuss. So it's the same thing as the stress response. So you keep shoving that down, and that in itself is an energy that's low frequency, that it can build and build and build into a chronic illness because it's just like it's a stress.
Right.
Does that make sense?
That does make sense. So it's crazy that you bring up this stress response. I don't know if you know who Andrew Huberman is.
No.
So he's a neuroscientist from, I think he's a professor in Stanford, California, somewhere over there. Anyways, he has a very famous podcast. He's a professor of neuroscience. And so I was just listening to his podcast yesterday. He was talking about stress, like the short-term stress and then kind of long-term stress, like what you're talking about. Yeah. And if I understood him correctly, he was saying that short-term stress, like, the tiger running after you or whatever, is actually healthy for you, for your immune system and that kind of stuff, because adrenaline is one of the things that can help your body fight off infection. But when you take that response that's supposed to be something that's really short and you prolong it, over a long time period, that's when it becomes, detrimental to your health. And
Absolutely.
it's crazy that when we think about stress, because most people, I think when they think about stress, and I don't know if stress would be an emotion or like a reaction to something, or maybe both, but it's like when we think about stress, we typically think about it in a negative thing, but it's like if it's in the short term, the way it's designed, then maybe it's something that's actually beneficial to us. And maybe emotions are the same way. Maybe if we feel an emotion about something, if we're angry, then maybe we're trying to protect ourselves or protect somebody else, or maybe somebody violated our standards or whatever it is. If we're guilty, maybe we violated our own standards or whatever, but it's like whenever you are sad, we're trying to be motivated to do something else. Whatever the emotion is, or maybe even a happy emotion, or like a positive emotion, like you're excited about something, you're passionate about something. Like, I think what I'm trying to get down to here is that, like, all these emotions, I feel like there's a message attached to the emotion.
100%. The emotions are exactly that. They're just a message. So and it can be as simple. You're absolutely, what he said is exactly right. The short term, it is a necessity. It's if we step out in front of a bus and you see it coming and you jump back, we need our stress response 100% to survive.
Right.
But it's that chronic illness factor. Is the chronic illness factor that's created all such, the Western world is full of chronic illness. And emotions are exactly the same. And you can look at them as simply as, if it feels good, then think more, do more of that. If it doesn't feel good, okay, what is it? What is it that I am thinking? And you're right. If it's anger or shame or guilt, then be okay to feel it. But also, if you don't want it there's exercises that you can do so that when you are realizing that that's a thing, instead of reacting and really shouting and carrying on, you can work with them to get that energy out of your body, so you can then just respond as opposed to. So there's a number of things that you can do, but it's basically being okay with whatever emotions are surfacing. If it's not feeling good, ask yourself, well, what's going on? Why isn't it? What is triggering it? Is it a person? Is it a situation? Once you become aware of what is going on and what's caused it, what the triggers are, what is stressing you, then at least you have a knowledge of what to work on so it doesn't happen again, or happens less frequently, or you don't react in the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, man. I think, I mean, that all makes sense, but I think we need to when we talk about like, not wanting to feel these things and like resistance to this, I think we need to give ourselves a little bit of grace, because it's like we live in a society that's almost like, it's almost like discouraged to feel those emotions or express those. Like you think about like most children, most children, if they're having a tantrum or whatever, they're told to suppress that and to not act out that emotion, which I don't know, maybe I'm not a parent, so I can't really comment on that. That may be the proper way to do it. I'm not sure, but at least communicate the emotion, at least communicate what it is, what is it? Because I think about, so I'm 31, and I think about, like when I was a child, and most people that I know that are similar to age and me, it was one of those two things. It was that, the what would it be? I guess the discipline aspect of it was, don't express your emotions in that way, or don't say that. And now a lot of those people who were children at that time, as adults, surprisingly enough, they don't express their emotions. They don't know how to communicate their emotions. And when they feel those things, it's just like a bad thing. So I'm not saying I'm the guy that's got the solution for that. I definitely don't. And I don't know if that's the right way or the wrong way to do it, but
No,
it's just,
and I think, but you're saying that at 30, I'm older than you, and I think it was even worse earlier generations to me. They just don't, you just don't deal with emotion at all.
yeah,
And you want to express it. You absolutely want to express it, but it's understanding what it is that's going on inside you,
right,
and then knowing what to do when that surfaces. And there are definitely exercises. I'm working with children there's a set of going back to Eden Energy Medicine, there's a set of exercises that you can do daily to work on the 9 energy systems in your body. And then certainly anger for me. So it's how complex I want to discuss this all, but Chinese 5-element system, it works that each element has a different meridians attached to them, and it also has different personalities. And depending on the element is dependent on whereabouts the layer, it sits in your aura. So we've got an aura that goes beyond us, and one of those layers has the 5 elements within it, and whichever layer of the 5 elements is closest to you is your primary element. And that will then also, the primary element then can determine the emotions that are most likely attached to that element. And for me, I happen to be the wood element, and the emotion attached to the wood element, we're out of balance, is anger. So that's my go-to emotion, is anger. And I've got great exercise to deal with emotion, because that is when I was working in the health system and I'd come home, this is the exercise I religiously did, because I didn't want to keep that anger inside of me. I wanted to actually go to sleep at night. So and all of the elements have their own exercises to do depending on what it is that's surfacing. So it's all, yeah, you're absolutely right, because people do need to express their emotions, but it's not just expressing it. It's about understanding what it is, first of all, that's triggered it, being aware of it. So when it's repeated, because it will be life, you just know it will be, because that's life. And then knowing what to do when it does happen again. So the emotions aren't controlling you. You're totally aware, and you can control how you respond as opposed to react. And it's so powerful, because I know that when I got involved in it, it was such a key, because I obviously feel emotions a lot, and most of my clients do as well, which is why they seek out energy medicine. And because no one had ever told you what to do with them, it was like this light bulb, this massive light bulb. And when you start looking at your life as just everything as energy, it puts such a different spin on everything, actually. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's pretty magical. And it's so good to be able to pass that knowledge on.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to, just while we're on this topic, I want to clarify something really quick. When we talk about expressing emotions, I don't think that, I know I said expressing emotions as a child, which is maybe debatable, but I don't think expressing emotions is necessarily the best way to go about it. Because if you express anger, that might not be the best way to handle that emotion. But I think you're right. I think understanding it, listening to the message it is trying to communicate to yourself. One thing that I love about this conversation is we're talking about this mind-body connection, and how the connection to that. And when we're talking about emotions, talk about maybe expressing them in a positive way. So like, I know so anger can be an incredibly motivating emotion. Like if you're trying to do something or achieve something, get in a goal or whatever it is, and something gets in your way and you're irritated about it, it can be if you express it in a positive way, it can be incredible fuel for, the path to that goal. But I notice a lot, like if I'm irritated about something or agitated or, just really not even agitated would not be the word. It's like, whatever the emotion would be, is if you're trying to really be patient for something and you don't necessarily have enough patience and you're just trying to like get to the thing. What would that be? That would be a lack of patience. I don't know what the word for that would be. But anyways, feel like experiencing something like that, I've noticed that one thing that helps me, and I think a lot of people feel this way, is a very not hard, but a good workout. Going out, a good run or a good weightlifting session or whatever. And you hear people talk about, like, when you have that emotion, obviously listen to it, understand the message, but then releasing it in some sort of, productive way, whether it's, writing or drawing or a workout or whatever it is. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you think that's a healthy way to release the energy?
100%. So I look at it. So, an emotion is just energy. So if you can get it to move, how do you get it to move? Whether it is through exercise, you can never go wrong with, just don't overdo it, because but yeah, regular exercise, you've got your endorphins running through your body. Again, it's hormones, but these are really good feeling hormones. So even if it's just a walk, energy medicine, it's just movement. Yoga is movement, but you're in a flow situation. It's not about pain and I know that going to the gym, you can lift weights and it's, build up big, but it's all movement. It's all grounding, incredibly grounding. So some of the things that are really, really, all of this, one of the basics of it is grounding. And by grounding, yes, it's going outside and getting your feet in the dirt and connecting with the earth. But that's not always possible because of the climate. But there are other ways to do that. And things like weightlifting is good because that's very grounding, and building up muscle strength. Visualizations work, and like you say, journaling, because then you're bringing the subconscious into it more. It's not just purely the physical. So there's so many ways of doing things. It's finding your things that work for you. And certainly from a point of view of anger, and if you're ruminating, exercise is brilliant. Walking's a really good one for me. You just keep walking. So you really walk. And wood element has a really fast walk. So you just walk fast, and it just moves the energy.
Well, I don't know if you know this or not. Again, this is something that I've learned from Andrew Huberman. But if you're walking, so it has to be, so if you're on a treadmill or something, you're kind of stationary and you're burning that energy off, and that's kind of one thing. But if you're outside walking and you're walking like past trees or cars or whatever, the forward motion that your eyes see as you're passing these things actually helps calm the amygdala, which is where a lot of this fear and stress come from. So that's why if you go on a walk or a run, you feel good because of the endorphins and the workout, but you're also calming that stress factor. And that's something that I learned from Andrew Huberman. But we talk about grounding, and I know you're talking about grounding to the actual earth for the energetic field and that kind of thing. But have you ever heard of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding? So, okay,
No.
So there's a method called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding, and it's a little bit different from what you're talking about. It's not grounding to the earth, but it's grounding in the present moment. So if you're in a space, if you're, stressed about something, maybe you have to give a speech or something like that. If you can ground yourself using 5 different avenues, so it brings you to the present moment. So what you do is you look for 5 things, you identify 5 things that you can see in your environment, 4 things that you can touch in your environment, 3 things that you can hear in your environment, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. So what you're doing is you're going through
Oh, I
all
like
5
that.
senses, and you're using
Yes.
your environment, and it grounds you to the present moment, and it sort of relieves that stress and makes you more present.
No, completely. And it's all of that. Grounding is being in the here and now and connecting. It doesn't matter how you've done it. So that is another way. I like that. I'm going to use that. Thank you.
Yeah. It's powerful, man, because, it's crazy. Like we think, like we live these lives where we're all like, stressed out, we're busy, we have things to do, we have appointments, we have meetings and stuff. But it's like, if you think about it, man, the only thing that exists is the present moment. Like every single moment
Yeah,
that you can imagine or remember or have, all it is a present moment. And everything else is either imagination or memory, like,
completely. And you think of the stories we tell ourselves, for heaven's sake, like, seriously? All
well,
we
I
actually
think,
think is a load of rubbish. It's not
well,
real
I don't know.
anyway.
I mean,
It's our interpretation.
it is, but it's like when you realize that everything is as far as we know, we only experience this once. We only experience all these things once. And it's just like, I don't know, it makes the present moment that much more valuable when you know that it's just like that's all it is. It's just that moment, just that present moment. I mean, it's like it almost makes life seem like a lot more simple than what it is, I guess. It's just
You've
like
hit the nail on
this
the
is it.
head. It's simplicity. And I think this is the thing. All this that we're talking about, it really does come back to simplicity.
Yep.
That's why if you can think, if it feels good, if it's a good emotion, well, do more of that. What did you do to do that? Just because you've got a whole list of things that you're supposed to do. Well, if we can, because then you're in your flow. If you look at things like passion and purpose, if you tune into what you really like, it's often what you're really good at. And when you're doing things like that, even if you were journaling, or if you were to blow, playing with Play-Doh or doing a drawing, when there's nothing else to do, and that's the only thing you've got to do, you're stuck in a room and that you've got to do something. When you're doing that sort of thing, you're really you start getting in your flow. You're not thinking, like you say, you're living in the here and now. You're not thinking of that to-do list or what you left behind. You're thinking of right now, and you're just getting lost in whatever the movement it is that you're doing. So do in life, whatever that is for you. So for me, for example, like I paint as well, and I actually paint energy and what goes on in my subconscious. And I'm totally lost in my flow when I do that. Time has no meaning. When I'm doing yoga, it's the same thing, because I'm connected, I'm grounded, and we're in the here and now. Yeah, and it's being in that more often than not. And when you are in that more often than not, you're certainly a lot calmer and more relaxed. And that really is the whole crux of that whole stress that we were talking about earlier. If you are in your flow, you're going to be in a situation where you can heal. Your body can heal. So it's all about being aware of your triggers, and awareness is massive. If it's awareness is kind of 9/10 of the law. Once you're aware, then you can choose to work on that. And what is it that I need to do so that I'm not in that situation?
Yep. Yeah, I think I've always said that, self-awareness can alleviate, if not eliminate, a lot of the problems that we have,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
being
And so
self-aware.
self-awareness and grounding are two
Hmm.
massive things to just do that, and your life will change if if there are things that you haven't done previously.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You mentioned happiness, and that's an interesting word, because I think when a lot of people say they want to be happy, I don't think it's happiness that they want. I think they want to be fulfilled, and that's like a completely different. Like, I mean, happy. You can be happy short term doing things that are like really not productive, or you can be fulfilled long term if you're pursuing something that's much higher than yourself. And I think, it sounds like I pick on men a lot on this podcast, but I think that's one thing that and I can't speak for women because I don't, I'm not one, but I think with men, that's one thing that we're really missing. A lot of us is that sort of pursuit of that thing, that pursuit of that higher purpose, whether it's career or family or whatever else. And I think those things, at least for a man, they do bring fulfillment. When you're proud of something that you're building, you're proud of this thing that you're putting all this effort to. It's like it's I think that's why like a lot of men are interested in like sports and video games and stuff like that, because it's like that it's like that virtual,
they're achieving something.
right? It's like a virtual fantasy almost of like that pursuit. But it's like, man, you can have that same energy in a real life endeavor, whether it's a career or a business or family or whatever it is. And it's just, I don't know, man. I think to speak on the mental health aspect of it, I think that's why a lot of men right now are experiencing that mental health decline, is because of
Yeah.
that lack of purpose, that lack of pursuit. But
No,
yeah, I
and
just,
is it the same for women? I think it is the same for women.
Mm.
It's just approached in a different way because we're more nurturing, and I suppose a lot of in the olden days when women stayed at home and looked after their children,
Mhm.
there were probably more fulfilled women. I might not be I might not make everyone happy by what I'm saying, but there were probably more fulfilled women because they had their role and they were quite comfortable in the fact that they were there in the family home bringing up children. Now,
Mhm.
not every woman is like that. So that wouldn't have been for them, which is why we've gone through the evolution of the things we have with, Emily Pankhurst and all those sort of things where women have got the right to vote. And now it's probably gone to the other extreme where we're allowed to do everything, but are we doing everything properly?
Mhm.
That's a whole different conversation again. But the content feeling, I think it is very much content. And for me and my exploration with it all has been very much about it's once I started to understand me. So it is living in the here and now. It is all the things that I've spoken about up to now.
Mhm.
It is about, yes, pursuing things for sure. But for me, initially, it was just about pursuing my life with my children on my terms. So, and the way it happened, I wouldn't have. There's no way in the world when I had my children, I planned that to happen. I, I, well, I, yeah, it wasn't how it definitely didn't end up how I planned it. So their children are so emotive. So my whole life, I guess, since I left them is to get back with them. That's been my
Mhm.
pursuit of whatever has had to happen to get to that point. And I'm also along the way, it just so happened that all the work that I did, it actually has helped other people as well. So there's all these other things that have come along the way. But the content feeling I have that I am definitely living my purpose, no question about it. And I think you're right. Fulfillment, it is the word. It's like a content feeling internally. So no matter what, you get to that point where no matter what life throws at you, what's the worst that can happen? It's okay. Everything's okay. It may not feel high frequency, but it's okay. We don't have to respond in a bad way. We just deal with whatever it is that surfaces. But
Mhm.
also in doing that and having that feeling internally, you don't usually attract things. Now I don't attract things that are, I don't attract the drama that I used to attract because I'm not holding that frequency within me.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. Um, yeah, I think so. You use the word to go back to this purpose thing for just a second. You
Mm.
use the word content, and I think content is a good word. Because fulfillment, content. I think you become
Mm.
content if you're fulfilled. Um, because and then you mentioned something about the challenges coming at you, or if something challenges you, because if your main goal is just to be happy, then what happens if something comes along and makes you not happy? And then it's like you have there's no purpose. But if your purpose is to be content or fulfilled because you're content because you're fulfilled, it's like that becomes part of the journey. Like the obstacle becomes part of the journey. So like you said, like
Completely.
what can really, bother you or affect you if that's part of the journey. If you're trying to do this thing like with your children or your career, whatever it is, and it's like, oh well, this thing's in the way. It's going to take me 2 years to get a visa. Like that's part of the process. Like that becomes part of the goal. And so I don't know. Yeah, that I just wanted to close the loop on that happy thing, man, because that's, I don't think even if we had the ability to be happy, whether that was just laying on the beach or whatever it was that we thought would bring us happiness, like that would only last. That's a very
Yeah,
short term.
it's very short term, isn't
We'd
it?
probably get bored of that for like after a week, maybe even a couple days. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. I think I'd get bored quicker than that, to be honest. Just like,
yeah, yeah. I mean,
I'll go for a swim, but I wouldn't lay on the beach for long.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, but so
But
anyway,
I think it's more the high frequency feeling. If it feels good, well then follow that. It's like what signs are the universe giving you? And if it's really hard work and it's a struggle, well then stop.
hmm,
We're not designed to be struggling, and yet so many of us are. The whole reason our lives are, we're meant to, if we were living our purpose, and the world would be such a different place, because we would all be in our flow, doing our thing. And no two people have been put on this earth to do the same thing. But there wouldn't be competitiveness the same, because you know what your purpose is and you're quite comfortable in that. It's a bit like if you run a business and, you open I don't know, what do you open? You open a store that sells motorbikes, and then there's 10 motorbike shops in the next year that open up near you. Now you can look at that as terrible because there's so much more competition, but you could also look upon that as it's great because everyone that wants a motorbike knows where to come. And from an energetic point of view, if you're a motorbike shop that markets to women, then you're going to get the women. It depends on what it is that you're projecting out energetically as to what you're going to attract. So, and that's what marketing is, isn't it? So energetically, there's no point worrying about it. It's kind of like, it's almost like you want to just roll your life up into whatever's happening, roll it up, keep asking what is happening. Why is if you're connected to your intuition, you can ask these questions. And the difference between being in tune with your intuition or not is just about confidence. Keep practicing chatting to it, and then you get that then you'll get those answers when you ask, and be okay with the answers. So that's really the confidence, is the confidence with tuning into your intuition. We've all got the ability to, but it's doing it enough so you're comfortable with with the connection.
I think a lot of people, they don't they can't trust that intuition, that intuitive voice, which is crazy because you think about, like, that voice literally comes from inside of you. It comes from you. It comes from your higher self, or from the universe, or from God, or, wherever you think it comes from. But it's like, it comes from inside of you. So like the inability to not trust it does not make sense. Like, it makes so much more sense to not trust what somebody else tells you to do versus what you yourself tell you to do. It's just
I love you
crazy.
saying that. That is so, isn't like, we are so bonkers as a human race, aren't we?
But then, like I tell people too, like, okay, I get it. If if your intuition tells you to start a business or something like that, pursue a career that's completely outside of your field, like, that's a very big leap. And I understand that. But at the same time, it's like, okay, if you really narrow down, like, where that comes from, like, let's say it comes from, if it's your high, let's say it's your higher self. Okay. If you don't listen to that, well, maybe you let yourself down. That's a huge thing. Well, maybe it comes from the universe. The universe, I think a lot of people can agree, is much bigger than us. Okay, then you don't listen to it then. Okay, well then, that also is not good. But then if you believe that it comes from a creator, a divine creator, like I believe there's a God, if it comes from a supreme being from all of us and you don't listen to it, man, it's almost like, how can you not listen to that? You know what I mean? Like that's just disrespectful, I feel like. But it is that challenging thing, man. Whatever it is for you, it is that challenging thing. But it's like, that voice or that message or that whatever it is, the feeling, the insight. It's like, man, you have to be able to trust that, and that's crazy. And what I tell people a lot too is, like, it comes down to one of the benefits of building self-confidence. And I don't mean like, going out into the world and people like you or that kind of stuff. I mean, it's the confidence with yourself.
Yeah.
It's like when you're able to build that self-confidence through a fitness program or a meditation program, prayer, whatever it is for you, you have the ability to, it's easier to listen to that voice. Because if you can look back over your life and you say, I wanted to do this thing, I wanted to go to the gym at this time, I wanted to build this business, or, build this family, or whatever it was for yourself. if you look back over your life and you have done those things and now you can trust yourself, then when that intuition comes, you're like, okay, like this doesn't make sense. People might not agree with this, but like I really feel drawn to this. I really feel, led to do this thing. I don't know, man. It's just a bizarre thing. But I guess on the other hand, if you do feel that and you do know that it comes from a higher power, then maybe that higher power is on your side to achieve that thing,
Yeah, I know what you're saying once you've got a track record with it. And it is very much. I mean, what I tend to do is if something like that comes and it's come from left field and it's like, oh my God, what's all this about? I'll live with it. I'll live with it a couple of days and see if it's still there. And
Mhm.
and so you don't have to actually act on it straight away. But yeah.
No, yeah, don't do that.
And yeah, exactly. And the other thing that happens with the universe, though, or whatever it is, like you say, whatever it is that you refer to it as, the universe keeps prodding you until you do something about it.
Exactly.
Which is what happened with me with my health in regards to getting out and leaving the health system. It'll keep prodding you, just like, time. It's time. It's just time. Come on, hurry up. It's time. Let's do this. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's true, man. Because if you can have a lot of fleeting goals or ideas or whatever, but I think if it's something that you're supposed to pursue, you'll know, because it's not normal. Not normal is not the right word. It's not typical for a person to think about a thing multiple times a day, every single day. Like whatever that thing is for you, other people don't have that. Like if you want to be a professional, painter, not almost zero people have that aspiration. So yeah, I don't know, but
and it's really interesting though. Once you do start getting into your purpose, it's even if you don't listen, and also like life is stages as well. So initially, you do things, and then you might take a left turn, and then you do other things that as you get older, and something else happens. But what I'm finding now is all the things that were kind of random that didn't, and I turned another corner and went a different way. They're all starting to come back in, and as all part of this bigger picture as to why I was doing them anyway. So nothing you've ever done is ever wasted. It's all part of your bigger picture and purpose. It's a bit like doing a jigsaw and not knowing where the pieces fit. And then the more you get into it and doing your thing, the more the pieces that have happened in your past come back to create the whole. That's what I'm finding, which is fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the painting for me has certainly been one of the, like I've painted forever, ever. And in 2008, I painted for an art gallery in Melbourne, but I've moved around so much. And so it lasted while I was in Melbourne, and then it didn't. And now I'm starting to bring them back in. And that's even the content that I'm painting is the sort of stuff I'm doing working. And that was never planned. That was like how I use it. I journal as well, but it's how I use a journal. So everything that you've ever done in the past is going to come back as whatever it is, the bigger picture, once you start to follow what it is that you put on this earth to do. Yeah.
So when you make these paintings, what do you, I mean, what inspires that? Like, where does that come from? Is it just something you think up and you just kind of go with it, or?
Yeah. So what usually happens? Yes, all of that. But I get a picture. There's a story with it. It's something that's happened in my life or something with a connection with somebody, and I've always painted really colourful things, and maybe even a dream, and then I will just paint them. What comes into my head, and I'm usually quite prolific when I do paint. I've actually just started I've amalgamated my energy medicine practice with my painting, and I'm creating energetic soul portraits. And I work with someone's energy, tune into that, and whatever it is that they need work on when we catch up for a couple of hours, and then work with the chakras and get a color palette from their energies. And then I go away, and a couple of weeks later, I'll have painted it and finished it, and then I present it to them. And it's like, I have surprised myself with what I come up with. It's just fantastic. It's really, really, it's like, the response has been really positive. because it's where they are now and what their energies are telling them.
Yeah. You mentioned you surprise yourself, and that's interesting to me because, it's like, well, what if you never listened to that, whatever that was that made you do that thing, Like I think a lot of times we surprise ourselves when we pursue a thing. I mean, we can surprise ourselves, because we might not think that it's maybe not a good idea, or we can't do it, or whatever. But it's like we do the thing and it works, and we're like, well, shit, I didn't know, I didn't know this was gonna happen.
Yes,
like
yes, exactly.
and it's just like, but when you experience that, you're like, oh man. We're talking about fulfillment, that's a sense of being fulfilled. Like you would have
Yes.
never gotten there if you did not just listen to that thing that kept tugging at you, kept pulling you in that direction. And that's fascinating, man. I think whatever comes after this experience that we have right now, I think these are the things that we're really going to take with us to the next life. These lessons, these experiences, like growing through this experience on this earth. I think those things are definitely, I mean, they're just way too profound for them to not have a bigger impact than just right now.
100% agree. I absolutely 100% agree. And this is exactly right. And you start living your life. You don't, and that's why you view the world so differently, because it's not about you. Like, why am I in the UK? I'm here. I came because of my children, but there's a bigger picture than me being here for them. Because it's not something I would have done, and I don't know what it is yet exactly. But there's a lot of us that have come here from other countries, and there's a lot of ley lines, there's a lot of stone circles, so whether it's got something to do with that. But it is very much a bigger purpose thing. It's not, it's that micro and macro, isn't it? There's lots of varying levels of why we do what we do, but when you're in your flow, it is, all of us are in it is much bigger picture than just ourselves. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Way too profound, as you said.
Yeah,
And
I'd
be interested in your story with the podcast, what you got on them, because I'm sure that's part of your purpose too.
People ask me that, man. They're like, why do you do the podcast? Why do you start the podcast and all that stuff? And it's like, I really just want to be able to learn and share information from people. And it's like, we talk about being present. Like when I do this podcast, when I record with somebody, talk to somebody, I don't know, man. It's like, I don't know really how to explain it other than this, just like a very grounding experience. I think it's like I'm present with the person.
Yeah.
I don't have a cell phone or anything going off or any kind of distractions. I'm learning from a person. Hopefully the person is learning from me. Hopefully people that listen to the conversation are learning from it. And it's just like, I think it's part of that. We talk about this never ending pursuit of being better. I mean, this is like I think that's part of that,
Yeah.
Like I'm not trying to, I mean, it would be nice, but I'm not trying to like be a millionaire from it or anything. But it's like, I don't know, man. It's just like I think I say this all the time. We have social media and we have the internet. We have all, this ability to connect with people. And I think we would be doing ourselves a disservice if we did not use that to help better ourselves. Because social media and just the internet in general it can go one of two ways. You can get on there and you can scroll endlessly and you can be inundated with the negativity and the wars and all this kind of stuff. Or you can learn and you can connect and you can actually train your algorithm on social media to provide you with beneficial information. Like TikTok is a really big one, which they're talking about banning TikTok in the US right now. I don't know if they're going to. It's supposedly that after January 19th, it's not going to be available anymore. But
Right.
TikTok, YouTube, I mean, pretty much any video, but TikTok and YouTube, I've learned a lot from. And I think other people have too. Spotify, the long form podcast, that kind of stuff. And so I don't know. I think we live in a time right now where the information is there if you really want it. You can share it, you can learn it, you can, listen to it, watch it. So, I wanted to get to this before we get too far away, or before we maybe run out of time. So where are you? Are you still in the UK?
Yeah, I'm in Manchester.
Okay. So you were talking about the health system, like the current health system. And like, I think one thing that's really interesting to me is like this whole conversation we're having about experiencing your emotions, listening to your emotions, using those emotions for better. it's like, I don't know about the health system in the UK, but in America, there are literal prescription drugs that like suppress those emotions and suppress that experience. And I know that like a lot of people, I think, well, not a lot of people, a very small percentage of people who get prescribed these psychological drugs actually need them. I think I think the majority of people who get, and this is just an opinion from the outside looking in. I think a lot of people who have these psychological medications, it can be fixed with diet or environment or lifestyle or health or, fitness, whatever. And I just don't know why we can't go down that route before we do the prescription psychological medications, because it's crazy that we're having this conversation. I was actually listening to somebody talk yesterday. I don't know if you know who Jordan Peterson is.
No.
So he's a very famous Canadian psychologist. He was a professor, and I don't know, he was going through something. I think his wife was sick at the moment, and he was prescribed benzodiazepine, I think is what it is. Anyways, he took it for like a year or so, and he actually had to put himself in some sort of rehabilitation program to get off of the dependence.
Yeah, very addictive.
And so, and his daughter was saying that, like, 1 in 5 people who are prescribed those kind of medications form some sort of dependence, and they don't know that before they start taking it. It's a year later, 2 years later, they find themselves, being, I guess, addicted to it. So anyways, I think the healthcare system definitely has its flaws, and I've said that. Anybody who's listened to this podcast knows how I feel about that. But you mentioned that you were sort of in it, and then you sort of got out of it. So what happened there?
Yeah, well, like I say, so I was involved in the cardiac area,
Okay.
and I was actually in a case that we were doing, and you've got a normal heart rhythm, and so you come to us when your rhythm wasn't as it should be, and which means that when you've got the heart, normally it comes from a point in the heart, so you get a regular heart rhythm. When your rhythm isn't coming from where it should be, it creates a different, because the heart is electrical, it creates a different rhythm on the ECG. Okay, I'll try not to make it too technical. I'll switch my. And so it's coming from a different part of the heart than it should do. So we actually get in there and ablate the part where it's coming from. So then the normal pacing takes over, as it should be. So we're in one of those cases, and I start to swallow my heartbeat, and my heart is pounding in my throat, and I'm starting to faint. So I go off. I ended up being 3 weeks off work, and had a load of tests, and it was stress. It wasn't my heart at all, fortunately. It was just stress. So I wanted then, right, for me, I've always looked after myself. I've always eaten well. I've always done exercise. So to me, that's a big alarm bell, right? I'm just going part-time. So I asked to go part-time, and there's a whole process to go part-time. So that took a long time. And the day they wanted me to go back full-time, the universe was looking down upon me, and I fractured my kneecap in the lab.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was off for another 10 weeks then. And when I did finally get back, they still wouldn't want me to go part-time. So it ended. It ended, and I didn't want to go full-time. I didn't want the position, and it sort of dwindled off. And I'm a lot better for not being in the health system. I was so angry. I was just it's the system itself, like helping people. That's what I've been put on this earth to do. That's not changed, but the way to do it. And the other thing that was very evident was that I've actually nursed a lot in Australian outback in smaller towns. So I've had a lot of autonomy with the nursing I've done. So that was that was interesting coming here. A lot of politics and a lot of red tape, a lot more than Australia. But I also found that because I've been involved in energy medicine for some time, my ideals have changed a lot as well. So what I was seeing wasn't really how my beliefs had changed, and that wasn't matching up to what I was seeing and where the input was going. So it was kind of like my soul was dying, really, and I wasn't enjoying it any longer. So it was an obvious thing to go. So it was on a few levels. Physically, it's because I wasn't listening to the universe. It kept kicking me and telling me to get out. And my beliefs weren't matched up to what I was working as well. So it's time to go. And and then it's like, you've for years even though I've moved around a lot, but and so had, you'd always have a paycheck at the end of the week after you'd done work. And now I'm learning all about business and all those other things that happened, doing my own thing. And it's a massive learning curve. It's very, very different on so many levels. But I love the autonomy and I love the people that I'm working with. And it's all part of that, as we mentioned earlier, it is the journey. It's all of that becomes part of everyday life. It's not a separate thing, and it's not like the visa, as much angst there might have been at the time, it's all part of the bigger picture. I wouldn't have got to this point if all that hadn't happened. I wouldn't be who I am now if all that hadn't happened.
Well, I think the important thing to realize there is that I think you even mentioned the word your soul. Had you stayed, the cost would have been your soul. It would have been, you would have just simply not been happy or fulfilled, to use our other word.
Absolutely.
Doing that, and I think that's something that really scares a lot of people, man, is like that, they're leaving that job or whatever it is, that relationship or whatever. And it's almost like a sense of security because it's familiar for one thing, but then it's like when you said like the paycheck for the bigger company was going to be there and that kind of thing. But it's like, man, it liberates you, it's just like liberated, especially if you're supposed to be doing something else. And I'm not saying that working for a big company is bad. I mean, some people do that and they're completely okay. But I know when I started my business, I could not, man. I was 20 years old and I had from like 16 to 20. This is no exaggeration. I probably had like 40 jobs, like 30 or 40 jobs. And I had the warehousing jobs. I had all that kind of stuff. And it was like, I say this all the time. The people around me that worked in those jobs, like they were good. They had families, they had houses, whatever. And it almost makes you feel selfish in a way. Cause you're like, oh man, these people around me, they enjoy their job. They have careers and families and stuff. And it's like, well, I want to do something different. And it makes you feel selfish, but it's like, going back to that intuition, that inner voice, like you almost have an obligation with yourself to pursue that, because I don't think if you pursue that and if you do it to your best ability, I don't think you're going to fail. But even if you do fail, first of all, the journey is the experience. So you're going to become a person through that journey. And that's what's valuable. It's not the money. It's not the career. It's not none of that. It's who you become 100%. In that journey. And so that is the prize. But it's like if you go through that, and you listen to that voice and you fail, okay, you might fail. And yes, that sucks, but at least you listen to yourself. What happens if you don't? What happens if you spend 40 or 50 years in a corporation or industry or a career that you're not satisfied with, and you get to the end of that line? If you make it there because you don't have some sort of major health event before then, because you're stressed out all the time because it's not really what you want to do. What happens if you spend all that time and you look back and you're like, man, what if I would have listened to that voice? What if I would have done that thing?
No, look, you're absolutely 100% right. And because there's so much fear attached to not having that regular income because we've got things that we need to pay every week. And of course I get that. But it's a choice as well, isn't it? It's very much it is about balancing, being sensible about things so that we're all not living on the streets because we've followed our passion. But if you're in your flow and you're meant to be doing what you're doing, then from my experiences, the universe does provide. Mm-hmm. Even though it is honestly a leap of faith. One of the pictures that I painted really early on, almost not long after I left that relationship that wasn't great and left my kids behind. It's called The Leap of Faith. And because I felt at the time, like I couldn't go any lower. There wasn't, what else is there? I haven't even got my children that I put on this earth. And I refer to that all the time. It's like, I've got nothing else to lose. So why not listen to the voice? Why not just follow it? And now I refer to it not in quite a dramatic way, but I think about that. If there's something that I'm questioning, okay, just take the leap of faith. It feels right. So go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much.
This has been an incredible conversation. But I want to, so the healthcare, I was going to ask this about the healthcare system. So in America, our healthcare system is not like, I don't know, man, we have some flaws over here. And we have a new political administration coming in, and the promise is to change a lot of this stuff. And I mean, we could talk about promises from a politician, but I feel hopeful from it, because I don't know, there's things in the food, there's things like, it seems like, at least in the American healthcare system, it's like there's more focus on treating long term a disease than there is curing the disease, or maybe even preventing it. You know, um, like, I don't know, we have all these, there's all, like I said, the chemicals in the food, the healthcare system seems like it's almost perpetuating the disease
Yeah.
by because you take a pill, you take a magic pill, and then it's supposed to fix one thing, but then along with the pill comes 10 other things. And so,
Yeah.
and then you're in that situation. And I don't know, man, I just feel like, like we don't, when we hear of medicine, we don't hear a lot of like health, because you almost have to go to a podcast to learn that like sunlight on your skin and in your eyes can be good for your immune system. You almost have to go
100%.
to a podcast or go to YouTube to understand that, like, if you fast for 24 or 48 or 72 hours, if you can make it that long, if you fast, your body can fix a lot of these things. Andrew Huberman was just talking about yesterday, when I said about that stress conversation. If you can elicit that stress response, and you can even do this through breath work, you can breathe in a certain way that causes your body a short-term stress. If you can do that, that can help you fight off infection. It's just like, it's crazy, man, that we don't hear about that. And like grounding, go outside with the bare feet and hit and touch the earth, like all these things, man.
They're all so simple, aren't they? They are really simple, but we're not told exactly. Like, why aren't these things in the schools? Why aren't these things, so a lot of the people that I'm working with, parents that are infertile, that want to get pregnant, and the one of the programs that I do is for them. A 12-week program is transformational, because it is all about working on them, and you can test energies to see if the energy is coming up from the earth for them. And for a lot of people that are infertile, it's not. So the ball of our foot has the kidney meridian, and you need energy coming up from there. For women, energy comes up earth in spirals. For men, it comes down from above. So if they're not grounded and they're not getting energy up, you're not going to conceive. And that's the same for anything like endometriosis, or for any fibroids and things like that for women. So there's some really simple things that you can look at to see what they need to do. And it is things like grounding and connecting into themselves and becoming aware of what it is that they're saying, because it's all about frequency. And in terms of the health system over here, it sounds very similar. The difference is, of course, we don't have, yours is private, ours is public, but it's the same concept, that people expect a medication to when they go to the GP, expect a medication as the result of their visit, as opposed to, why don't you go for a walk? Why don't you try yoga and then come back to me? And I know that my daughter, who's just started university, her friends, several of her friends at 18, 19, they're all on antidepressants to get through their schooling. Like, how does that work? Is that normal? When did that become the normal? That's scary.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about. That's a great example of using a psychological medication to help with a life event. And I understand that people, they might need that, but I think there's better ways to handle that stress. I mean, we're not.
Well, that was when I was, I'd been mainstream health system. That's what I'd worked in for years. And I was encouraged to see a psychologist, and I was on antidepressants. And honestly, all it did was numb me, and I wasn't on a large dose. So it wasn't doing anything whatsoever. And I'm not saying, like, some people they work really well for, so I'm not poo-pooing them at all. But unless you question things, tune in and to see if they are beneficial, and question things. They certainly didn't work for me, and so I didn't go on them. And they do work for some people, but en masse, the things that I found that worked for me were grounding, were yoga, were things like walking and just exercising, just basic thing. And then energy medicine was sort of getting in touch with my emotions, all the things that we've talked about today. Far more powerful than any medication. And as you mentioned as well, you're given a medication, and then all medications we take have side effects. So let's have a tablet to cover the side effects of that medication. Like, that's just more toxin in the body that the body really isn't going to benefit from, because it's more toxin. It's unnecessary.
The more we have conversations like this, I think the more obvious it becomes that we're really in a spiritual war. I feel like the whole civilization of humanity. We're just in this. There's just so many opposing forces. Like you have the main, I guess, what would it be? The mainstream healthcare system. Then you got what should be the traditional or holistic healthcare system. And then there's the politics and it's like, there's just like I think it's obvious that we're going through an evolution as a human race, but it's like there's opposing sides. Like I think one side wants to keep things the way it's always been, and one side wants to really experience who we truly are. And I don't know. I hope that we can figure out a way to cooperate with that and evolve as a species, because we don't want to be our own downfall. We don't want to be the
You're
reason.
100%. And what you mentioned earlier, though, about how technology can be, there's some positives in technology. It's like the medical system. I mean, some of the technology is fantastic, but it's using it in ways and working. They would work so well together. Yep. The complementary and the current. I mean, at the moment, I would suggest if you have an accident, any trauma, absolutely get to any government hospital, because they're brilliant with trauma. But it is the chronic illness. It's that long-term stuff. That's what you've got to question and go deeper than just mainstream care. There's so much more out there now that works a lot better than mainstream care. But it's and unfortunately, it has to be upon you to go seek it out, because it isn't mainstream yet.
Mm. Listen, I'm gonna let you get out of here. Before we close, where can you be found? Do you have websites or social media?
Yeah, so my website, so as my name, Jodi Anne Law, is spelt Jodi with an I, Anne with an E. So www.jodiannelaw.com is my website. And then my Facebook page is the same thing. My Instagram is the same. And my YouTube channel is the same. Okay. So, and on my website, I've got some free things, and you can book on for a consultation, or you can, there's positive affirmation you can upload, or a how to deal with anxiety. But yeah, there's plenty to have a look at on those.
Okay. On those links. And if you want to send me the links to all that, I'll put them in the videos so they'll all be in the same place.
No problem.
So one thing that I normally ask people before we close, if you could share one of the most important lessons you've ever learned. It could be something from your personal life, if you're comfortable sharing it, your career. What do you think I know it's hard to say the most important, but if you could say one of the most important, what do you think that would be?
Okay, that's a really interesting question, isn't it? Right at the end there. Do you know what? I think one of the most important things that I've learned, and again, this is really simple. It's community. Community is so important. Like, it's so easy to charge ahead and do your own thing, and it's great because then you're following your purpose. But community, it almost slows you down, but in a nurturing way. And I guess for me, that's something that I really want to build up for me as much as the community, and share everything I've got to offer. So one thing I've learned is really, really be part of a community, that fulfillment and contentment. Because a couple of things, you then connect with other people and realize you're not on your own. A lot of you will be thinking the same things, because if you're going to meet those people, you're going to be resonating similarly anyway.
Right.
And so it's very fulfilling. So two things. And the second thing is it's really fulfilling, that what we were talking about earlier. Don't just stick to yourself. We're human beings. We need people around us. That's what we're designed to do.
Yeah, and again, going back to that social media and the internet, that shows us that we're not alone, and I think that's incredible, because sometimes, man, the world can feel like a very lonely place, But I think yeah, I see that sense of community. I think that's very empowering.
Yeah, absolutely. And even just like this conversation with you today, now I've met you, I know a bit more about you. So, that to me is gold. We've connected at this level. Let's just continue that friendship or relationship.
Yeah. Well, what's crazy, and we were talking about the podcast earlier, like, it's not often that we have a conversation like this with people anymore, because even if we have a conversation with somebody, there's all this stuff going on in the background. There's people walking by or whatever, but this is like it zeroes in to that person. And I think that's one of the reasons that we do have, hopefully most people think the conversation here is positive, hopefully, but that's why we have this experience, because we have that I know community sounds like it's with a lot of different people, but I think unless you can connect to the people in that community, it's not really going to make a difference.
No, 100%. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So, and I think that's what something like this does is we just had that, because even if you go to a meeting or something, you see a lot of people, like, they're checking their phone while they're there, they're emailing or whatever they're doing, but like this, we're just present and we're just with that person, and it's just, I don't know, man. We don't, in our busy life, we don't have a lot of that anymore.
No, and I think that's the thing that people crave. It's that, okay, then, so it's connected community. It's connected community rather than just community standalone. Yeah. It's very that, and it feels like when you're in that, and when you're with people that get you on that level, it's like you've got that big blanket wrapped around you, and you are being nurtured. The universe is nurturing you. Yeah, and that's not bad considering you're in southern USA and I'm in Manchester in the
UK.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, listen, man, I'm gonna let you get out of here. It's been an incredible conversation.
Yeah, really enjoyed it.
If you can hang out for just a couple seconds, I'm going to explain to you about the upload and all that good stuff. But yeah, definitely appreciate your time. Appreciate your insight.
Lovely. Thanks, Cody.
Let me see here. Hey guys, I really appreciate everybody tuning in today. If you found this content or this episode useful and intriguing, you can visit us on social media. This is Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Rumble, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple and Google Podcasts. Pure Wisdom Podcast on all social medias. You can interact with us, follow, like, and share there, and we will see you guys next time.